Hello, and welcome to part 4 of the guide to AEOI Hub reporting templates. In this session, we're going to be looking at the process of creating reports for FATCA and CRS. Before we get into the process of creating the FATCA and CRS reports, I first of all wanted to show you some of the reporting options, both at the accounts level and also at the overall options level. At the accounts level, if I go to the far right on the accounts data worksheet, over here we have some reporting options. This allows you to exclude from reporting particular accounts, and you can also put the reason and additional information. So this is included in here so that you can, if you want to, include all of your accounts in the spreadsheet, and then you can exclude the accounts that are not reportable for particular reasons. This information is also accessible by clicking anywhere for a particular account and opening the account details. So if I were to click on account details for a selected account and go to the reporting options screen, I can say to exclude from reporting, and I can also put some additional information in here, and I'll show you more in terms of when we create the reports what that will then do. So for example, if I say that this is an exempt account type, for example, the reason for exclusion box has a couple of items in there. That is primarily aimed at the Cayman Islands CRS compliance form, where you need to categorize your account's reason for exclusion, either because they're financial institutions or another reason. If you're using this for other jurisdictions, then you don't need to worry too much about choosing something there. That's more specifically for that reason. However, whichever jurisdiction you're preparing for, you can use this exclude and put the additional information. What we've also got, in addition to being able to say exclude generally, you can also say that it's FATCA exempt, which could exclude it from the FATCA reporting but not the CRS, and similarly CRS exempt, to exclude it from the CRS but not the FATCA. And there can be some reasons behind that. If I just update, close this, I have another account here where that's been selected, FATCA exempt, and I won't get into the details, necessarily the technical details of this, but there can be reasons why an account might be outside the scope of FATCA, but still could be within CRS scope, particularly in the case of passive NFEs that might be US entities that are reportable as passive NFEs for CRS. That's catered for there with that option. Going to move on now to look at the overall options in the options screen. If I click on the options button, we have some options for FATCA and CRS in here. Under FATCA, there's an option to include financial institutions with no reportable accounts, nil returns. So in certain jurisdictions, that's a requirement. So if that's the case, then you can select that, and when we create the reports, we'll create the relevant nil indicators for those financial institutions. We've also got an option here to create separate submission files for each reporting financial institution. We're aware that that's a requirement in some jurisdictions, and where that's the case and you tick that, we will automatically create a separate XML file for each FI. So for example, in the template you could have 3 FIs and put all of your data in, and then we would automatically create the separate files as part of the report creation process. Finally, on FATCA, there's an option here to allow FATCA reports where you don't have TINs. We don't imagine that that would be used very often, because now it's the case that US FATCA requires a TIN for account holders in almost all circumstances. But if you selected that, it would then use the default TIN of 9 nines. On the CRS tab, there is a similar option for include financial institutions with no reportable accounts, nil returns, and that could be relevant to jurisdictions that require that. Separate submission files for each reporting FI. Similar to the FATCA option, we would automatically create separate files if that was required. Next, something that's relevant for CRS only, create separate submission files for each reportable jurisdiction. This is the case in quite a number of jurisdictions where they require a separate XML file for each jurisdiction of which you've got reportable accounts. For example, if you had some account holders that were resident in France, some account holders that were resident in Germany, some resident in the UK, you would then need to create separate submission XML files for each of those. And that's something that if you tick this option, we do automatically as part of the process. I'll show you an example of that later on. The next setting we have on here, always include a no TIN placeholder in the XML. That's relevant in some jurisdictions where if the account holder doesn't have a TIN, it requires you to include the TIN field, but with no TIN, literally the word no TIN included. So that's something we've added as an option there. And finally, there's the new option that we've added this year, include analysis of non-reportable accounts in the management reports. I'll show you how that works and how it looks when I create the reports. So I'm going to update that. Something to note about the options generally is that when you select the submitting jurisdiction on the config screen, we will automatically set the options that we're aware of being relevant for that jurisdiction. So for example, if you select a jurisdiction like the Cayman Islands or Gibraltar, where we know that a separate file is required for each reportable jurisdiction, then we will set that option. So generally, when you select your submitting jurisdiction, the options should be correct based on that. One more area I'd just like to look at before we move on to the process of creating the reports is in terms of the CRS reportable logic and the CRS matrix. On the accounts datasheet, we have a filter at the top of the screen where you can see the number of accounts that are FATCA reportable, CRS reportable, or not reportable for either of those. When I've selected CRS reportable there, I'm seeing that now this is showing me 79 accounts, and these 79 are displayed on the screen. What you can also do, if you go to one of the individual accounts and click on the account details button, it will show you on the tax information tab the jurisdictions that are reportable with a green tick for CRS. That logic of which jurisdictions are reportable is driven from the CRS matrix file. This is the CRS matrix file, and this is provided alongside the main AEOI Hub reporting template. Within here there are sheets for each of the years that are relevant. Each row in here is a jurisdiction that we support reporting for, and then the columns are the reportable jurisdictions for CRS. So for example here, if I select the Cayman Islands, it is currently showing that there are 103 jurisdictions, and as you go across here, each of the columns that says true is a reportable jurisdiction. So for example, if you're reporting in the Cayman Islands, just select one of these. For example, Argentina is a reportable CRS jurisdiction. Each jurisdiction may have a slightly different list depending on the agreements. For example, if I look here, Guernsey, whilst most of these, as you'd expect, are the same, some are slightly different. That's something that we are constantly monitoring at AEOI Hub, and therefore if there are changes and as the new lists become available, we update the CRS matrix. Back in the main template, if you need to update the main template for the CRS matrix, if there's been an update, you go to the About AEOI Hub by clicking on the logo, and you can click on Sync CRS Matrix. That will copy the reportable jurisdiction information from that matrix file into the main template behind the scenes to ensure that everything's up to date. That's been complete. As a general rule, when you get a copy of the AEOI Hub template, it will have been updated for the latest CRS matrix, unless there's a new version because we've become aware of some changes without there being a change to the actual reporting template. Sometimes that can occur, particularly if last minute a jurisdiction makes changes to their CRS reportable jurisdictions list and we didn't need to make a main change to the template. You could take that matrix file and could update to sync the main template. Right, okay, we're now ready to start the process of reporting. So once you're happy with your data, you click on the Create Reports button, which is available on the accounts data. It's also available on the config sheet. That's run through checking that everything is valid, the data, and then it's showing you how many accounts have been identified before you start the actual report creation. So you can choose at this stage to either only create FATCA or CRS, or you can actually create both at the same time. I'm going to do that now and click on Continue. Okay, the report creation process is completed. If I click OK, we'll have a look at what that's generated. So this is the reports screen, and each time you create a report, FATCA, CRS, it adds a row on here. You can see some summary information about the date, time, user, the type of submission. If you then, with that selected, click on this View Reports button, it brings up the View Report screen from where you can view and copy the XML and the management reports. If I click on the I next to the XML report, that's opened the XML file in a browser. So this is the file that is ready for submission. It has all of the details in there. In addition, we also produce a management report in Excel and PDF format, which has the same information as in the XML, just in an easier to read and understand format. If I click on the I next to the PDF version, that's opened the PDF management report. It gives some summary information about the type of report, summary about the number of accounts, the financial institution details, and then following that, the actual details of the accounts themselves. In addition to the PDF, we also produce the same report in Excel, exactly the same as the PDF. We produce it in Excel so that if you want to change the page breaks or change the formatting, you have that flexibility. So in here we have exactly the information you just saw in the PDF, but you can copy and paste and do anything that you might find useful with this. So that's the FATCA. The CRS is very similar. If I were to click on this and look at View Reports, I can look at the XML. This is the XML for CRS produced using the OECD schema, which is used by this jurisdiction, Jersey. And similarly, we have the PDF management report. In here we have the summary of the report type with the summary of the number of reportable accounts. What we also have, which has been recently added for this year, is an optional summary of the non-reportable accounts. So going back to what I was looking at earlier in the session, where I showed you how you could mark certain accounts as not reportable for different reasons, these would be displayed in summary here. So non-CRS jurisdictions is something that we actually pick up automatically, so we detect the accounts that are not in CRS reportable jurisdictions, or if the account holder is a financial institution or other reasons. And that account there is the one that I flagged as being not reportable earlier in the session. Going on through the report, you get the FI details, the details of reportable accounts by type, and then we get to our new sections where we list the non-reportable. This case is 3 accounts that were all US account holders, so therefore not within CRS. We've got some account holders where there were financial institutions that's listed there. And finally, the other reason, you might recall that was the one that I edited earlier, and anything that you put in the additional information is also displayed on there. So that gives you a tool that you can use to understand the full set of account holders if you want to use it. It is optional. You can switch that off if you don't want that section to appear. Going back to the view reports, we also have some fields on here that you can use to record the workflow in terms of when it's been submitted, etc. Again, that will then be saved in the template. So for example, if you want to record on here that the submission had been submitted and was successful, you could put that to accepted. You could put the date there. You could put a submission reference number if that's something received. You could put any of your own notes. And you can also link in as any submission documentation. For example, if you've got a copy of an email that you receive that confirms it's successful, or any other document, you can click on this folder, and there I've linked in a PDF document that I could then view if I wanted to. So you can view all of the information from here. What I'm now going to show you is what's actually been created. So that process has created XML, PDF and Excel files, but where has it actually saved them? By default, what the template has done when it creates the reports is it's created them to the same location that you were running the template for, and it's created a folder using the organization short name. The organization short name is this field here on the config sheet. If you didn't complete that, it would use the organization name. So using the organization short name keeps all the folders and the file paths shorter than if you were using the full name. Within that folder that it creates, it generates a folder for the year, so 2023, then FATCA and or CRS depending on what's been created. There's then a version subfolder, so if you'd had several attempts at creating the reports, it would create a version subfolder for each, and inside that you've then got the XML and the management reports in PDF and Excel format. Within the file naming for the management report, it uses the same organization short name unless you didn't have anything in there, and then it would use the organization name. What I'd like to show you now is the process of filing an amendment or correction. If you've submitted an XML for CRS or FATCA that's been generated from the template, it's very easy to file a correction if you need to. You tick this checkbox on the config sheet, amendment correction, and then select if it's FATCA or CRS and the relevant type. I'm going to do a CRS. You then go to the accounts data. You make the necessary amendments. So for example, I'm going to assume that this one account we originally reported the wrong balance. I'm going to update it, and you need to mark that it's to be amended, to be included in the amended report. So I can click yes there. Alternatively, what you can do is go to the account details, so click anywhere on the account row, click on the account details button, and go to the amend correct tab. One of the good things with using AEOI Hub template for processing the amendment is that it's got all of the message ref and docref ID from the original submission. And that's something that's really important for both FATCA and CRS. In this case, for CRS, I also just need to select the amendment type. Is it a correction or is it a deletion, i.e. telling the tax authority that you shouldn't have originally sent that account? In this case, I'm going to say it's a correction and click on update. I'm going to run the validation checks just to ensure everything's good. That's complete. I'm also just going to show you, in terms of the FI information, this first FI was the one that had the amended account. If I go to the Amend Correct tab within here, again I've got my message ref and docref ID because the original submission was created from this template, and it's identified there's one reportable account selected for inclusion. We have a checkbox here, include this FI in submission, but that's only relevant if there's no reportable accounts, i.e. if you had to file an amendment because FI details had changed, then you could select that. Also, related to that, a checkbox if FI details have been corrected. In this case, my FI details themselves have not changed, so I'm not going to tick that, and that means that we get the correct reporting which says that the FI details are being resent without any amendment. This time my report is a CRS correction for one account. I'm going to continue. That's completed. On the report screen now, note that it's added a new row at the top. So the most recent report created here at the top is a CRS correction with one account. If I click on the View Reports button, I can then see the XML and the management reports. This is the XML, and it's got all of the correct referencing that's required for this amendment. If I look at the management report, that's telling me that this is a CRS correction with one account. Something that we've added this year as an update is to show a summary for CRS of which of the accounts are corrected or deleted. In this case, the one account was corrected rather than being deleted, and then as you had with the management report previously, we have details of the actual account itself, and in the right hand column here showing that it's been corrected rather than deleted. So far in this session I've been showing you examples where the CRS file created is for multiple reportable jurisdictions. That's the case for a number of jurisdictions that we support. The example we were looking at just a moment ago was for Jersey. I'm now going to show you, by contrast, a jurisdiction that requires a separate XML file for each jurisdiction where there are reportable accounts. In this case, the submitting jurisdiction is Cayman Islands. If I go to the Options and the CRS tab, we have this create separate submission files for each reportable jurisdiction selected. I'm going to click on Create Reports to start that process. It's identified 89 CRS reportable accounts. I'm going to select CRS Return and then click on Continue. What this is now doing is creating a number of reports back to back. This may take some time because there are a number of reports to create, so I'm going to fast forward on this video once that's completed and show you what is created. That's completed the process of creating the reports. If I click on OK, it will now take us to the reports screen. What has happened there, and the process has run automatically, is it's created each of these separate files. For example, we have here 3 account holders that are reportable in Canada, with 15 Germany, got some Guernsey, Jersey, Poland, Spain, UK. If I look at one of these examples, click on View Reports, the XML file will contain those 3 account holders, all with the correct referencing, and the management report will also show the same details. In this case, on the first page of the management report, it's showing this is CRS for Canada. Again, we have the summary of the number of accounts, and then the actual account details themselves. So you can then take each of these files and submit them through the relevant portal to meet your CRS obligations. I showed you earlier that the template creates folders and subfolders automatically as relevant. Similar process here, but slightly differently. It creates within the CRS folder a subfolder for each reportable jurisdiction, and in there it contains the XML files and management reports. The final area I'd just like to show you is some functionality we have to import from an XML file. So if you have a FATCA or CRS XML file, you can click on Import Data, select XML, select the XML file to be imported. It's showing a preview of the information it's detected, in this case a CRS file with 3 financial institutions. If I click on Continue, it will import the data from that XML into the template here. That's complete, and it's imported the details here. If I look to look at the financial institutions, it's imported some details here based on the XML. There may well be some validation issues because it won't have all of the information that we're necessarily expecting for, say, FATCA. On the accounts data sheet, it shows on there all of the information it's imported from the XML. The benefit with the XML import is that it then imports all of the docref and message refs, so that if you need to do a correction, that makes the process straightforward. We hope that you found these videos useful. If you have any questions when using the templates, please get in contact with us.